Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
And they're off.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
And you're very welcome along to this week's edition of Friday Night Racing. It's Ger and Johnny with you every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock across OTB's social channels. You can get us on YouTube, Facebook and on Periscope on Twitter. Periscope doesn't exist anymore. It's how old that is. Feeling old, Johnny?
Yeah.
How many social media platforms have you seen come and go? Were you a Bebo person?
No. Yeah. How long is Bebo? How long was Bebo around now?
I mean, I don't know.
Are we better off for social media in our lives?
Were you on Napster?
I was on Napster, yeah.
Napster was the good old days.
That's when, yeah, back when musicians could actually earn a few bob for their craft, whereas now it's kind of, they're all on Spotify earning very, very little, unfortunately.
Yeah, so a slight tangent there at the start of this week's edition of Friday Night Racing.
Old.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. You can follow the Twitter account at HRI Racing. The hashtag is every racing moment. Around about the time, I mean, it's not that long ago, is it? I think Aidan O'Brien's success in the classics predates Napster.
Yeah, 25 years. Napster was, yeah. I doubt Aidan O'Brien was on Napster.
Anyway,
won't be able to ask him.
It is Guineas weekend at the Curragh. It's the first Irish Classics of the season, obviously. It's 25 years since Desert King won the 2000 Guineas, which gave Aidan O'Brien his first classic, which obviously cemented him as... Well, it was the start, really, of the incredible career that he's put together since then. But it also was kind of the signifying, okay, that torch has been passed from Vincent O'Brien. To talk to us about that career and put some context on that, I'm delighted to say Leo Powell, Managing Editor of the Irish Field, is with us. Leo, good afternoon to you. How are you?
Ger, how are you? How are you, Johnny?
Good, Leo.
I'd be very careful now about what platforms you'd ask Johnny he's been on, Ger. It could get difficult.
That's an interesting start.
Wow.
There we go.
What do you know that we don't?
Haven't seen him for a while, so I have to get a dig in.
There you go. Right, listen, can you put context on it? So we've got a lot of people who listen to this show who aren't racing aficionados. Everybody in Irish sport knows that Aidan O'Brien is a genius. But can you take us back maybe before 25 years ago when the classic victories started to rack up? Was it a bit of a left field for him to end up at Ballydoyle in the first place, or was it did it just make sense when that did happen?
No, I think it would be fair to say it was left field. Funny enough, I remember that classic day very well because at the time, to earn a few quid, I was the paddock presenter at the Curragh, and I distinctly remember introducing him because, of course, Desert King was bred up the road at the Irish National Stud, and so it was a big sort of local success as such at the time. But I suppose I first came across Aidan, I remember on a Good Friday taking Bob Buckler, a trainer in England that my brother used to ride for, taking him around Ireland looking for a national hunt horse. And one of our stops was in the yard that Aidan was based in, his father-in-law's, Joe Crowley's yard in Pintown, where, of course, Joseph is nowadays. And just seeing a few national hunt horses there. From memory, I think it was probably 1995. So that was a year before. Now, at that stage, I suppose, he had Double Symphony and That's My Man, where he's kind of two big ones, and You're a Bandit, the follow in 1996 won the Sun Lines at the novices at Cheltenham. Charlie Swan was riding. So, yeah, he was having success for sure, but the idea then of going to Ballydoyle in 96 was a bit left field. But I suppose, again, it was one of those things that showed that insight that John Magner had, that he could see a raw talent there and put him in and look at it off. Because I think my last count was about 360 Group 1 wins around the world. It's just been phenomenal. When he got to 250 in 2017, I remember putting a tribute in the paper to them, and here we are, 350 now, or 360. It's just phenomenal.
Can you take us back to, did we ever find out from Magner what he thought would end up being the outcome, and what it was that he spotted in Aidan O'Brien?
I don't think I don't believe we ever really did get that insight. I suppose, I mean, he had picked the winner and, the results spoke for themselves. But it's funny, sort of things that you remember, or that I remember. I remember that day in the yard. It was probably the first time I maybe had a conversation with Aidan that evening, or that Good Friday evening. And one thing that struck me going around the yard was the fact that every single stable we went to, passed by, he gave the horse in the stable, who were all looking out over the doors, he gave them a pat on the face or the neck, and sort of, he was very hands-on. It was something that struck me at the time very much. Here's the young man. I mean, it wasn't that it was something out of this world, but he did it with every horse, and it was that connection. And I think when he started training, I do remember some of the people maybe sneering a bit, because Aidan was always, at the horse's head. He was always walking around the ring with them or whatever. And, I remember people thinking a lot of that was a bit for show, but it wasn't, because that was exactly the kind of person he was. And, even to this day, I've been lucky enough, I'm lucky enough to get down to Ballydoyle on occasions. And it's again that absolute connection to the horse. And maybe that word had got back to John Magner and partners or whatever, but they definitely saw that rough diamond. They could see a bright emerald stone out of it. Here we are now, all these years later.
I have a lot of questions really about that kind of early formative years as well. So he's training in his father-in-law's yard at that point. Was he a dual-purpose trainer from the start? Was it, or did that start?
No, he was National Hunt, and of course, don't forget Anne Reid was champion National Hunt trainer before him, and he took over the license from her. And I mean, that yard has been incredible, because Aidan was followed into the yard ultimately by Frances Crowley, who started her career there. She moved up to the Curragh, married to Pat Smullen, of course. She's a fantastic trainer as well. So it's a yard that has spawned a huge amount of success, and now, of course, it's to Joseph. But no, at the time that all happened, Aidan was firmly established in people's eyes as a National Hunt trainer. And don't forget, of course, as well, that he was a pretty decent amateur rider too. So, I think at that time, if you were to bet where he would end up, it might have been where Willie Mullins is today, but he's on the other side of the fence, on the flat side.
We're just having a little bit of trouble with your mic there, Leo. We might come back to you in a second, but again, Johnny, for the racing listeners, they probably know a good bit of this story, but maybe sometimes we get a little bit complacent about the level of success that we're seeing. Like, it's a phenomenal level of sustained ability, and it's not just that he's winning and hoovering up titles in Ireland. They go and they dominate in England as well.
Yeah, and Christy Roche was obviously the rider that day, and Christy Roche is now himself retired as a trainer, which kind of shows Aidan's longevity, even though Aidan's in his 50s. Aidan was training winners that Christy Roche was riding as his first classic winner. Yes, Christy Roche is actually retired as a trainer now, and that just goes to show. And Aidan, looks as young as he's ever looked. And Christy Roche was interviewed in the paper today, and he said you could always see it in him. He was interviewed in the Race Post this week with Richie Forsell. Aidan had no interest other than training horses. I think that's really, really important, because lots of trainers you'll hear they like to celebrate a winner, and they like to do this. Aidan, teetotal. Not sure. I think there have been suggestions down the years that he might have some vague other sporting interests if the TV is on, but effectively all he wanted to do was be around horses. And in these times of the spirituality gone from a religion kind of changing in terms of Irish life, you do wonder, was Aidan like something else in a previous life? Because his knowledge of horses is just, I don't think you can teach that, and there's something abstract and magical and special about it. I think Leo, even it sounds like a simple thing to pat every horse, but most trainers don't really do that, particularly what would become the most successful trainer effectively we've had. And he's just, I don't know, there's just something different about him. I guess at that time, as Leo was alluding to there, he didn't necessarily have the CV. He had the CV with National Hunt horses. You often ask people when they come on, Ger, what's the difference in training National Hunt and flat? And generally the answer is usually there isn't actually that much of a difference. But at the same time, for the National Hunt trainer to then go training 2-year-olds and to become the best trainer we've ever had, and to be entrusted with Coolmore money and so on. I don't know, Leo, was there a surprise at the time?
Sorry, say that again.
Was there a surprise at the time because of his National Hunt background?
Yeah, no, it definitely was a surprise. I mean, bear in mind as well that he had spent some of his formative time with Jim Bulger down in Scotland, and so he learned from a man who had success on the flat. Now, of course, that academy has produced plenty of people who've been successful under both codes. So I suppose you just learn an awful lot there. And I think that was the thing about Aidan. I think he's inquisitive, and I think he funny enough, if you spend time with him, he'll ask you as many questions as you'll ask him, because he's keen to know. And I know you were saying there about having other interests, but I think from just having one-to-one conversations with him at times, you get the impression that really it is all about this. His attention to detail. I have occasion to remember being with him in the Jeep, and he spotted something with the 2-year-old that the horse was probably 100 yards from us or whatever, and he was able to spot something while having a conversation with me, and nothing is missed. The attention to detail is phenomenal, and at every level. It's very hard to explain it, but he knows every one of those horses, and he knows every one of the guys who work there, the boys and girls and men and women who ride out. They'll have 50 horses going out in a lot, and he'll know every horse, every rider, and they report to him as they pass by what the horses have done. It really is quite a phenomenal thing to watch and to see, and for me to be privileged to be able to see it. You've seen it, I'm sure, as well, Johnny, on trips there.
Yeah,
it's really, it's hard to understand or maybe express it properly, but it is just, I suppose you don't get to be the best in the world. Of course he has the material, but Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp have the best material too. You've then got to produce it on the field and on the racetrack, and to do it at that level on a consistent basis is really unimaginable. This is like Liverpool or Manchester City winning the Premiership every year for 20 years.
Yeah, and in fairness, like Aidan started with his humble beginnings. It wasn't, and Joseph and Dunica will, people will definitely say, well, sure, no wonder they can train winners. Like, look at what was handed to them on a plate, and that's true to an extent. But they've also a very good work ethic. Aidan himself, he wasn't really handed anything. And what Leo talks about there, if you're on the gallops, it is absolutely extraordinary, because say if there are 150, 200 horses riding out, a load of them are by Galileo, a load of them look extremely alike, extremely alike. And I'm not on about Aidan's knowing the name of every work rider, which itself is kind of, it's actually hard to observe and take in. It almost looks like it's a set, but it isn't. He's just he speaks to everyone. He's very mannerly. And then you look at the work riders, and they're former champion jockeys nearly riding out, for extremely good work riders, the best jockeys that some really good National Hunt jockeys riding out there now, some ex-jockeys riding out there who are still quite young, extremely good. And then this knowledge of all the horses. And when I was there the other day, I was there a couple of weeks ago, and as every horse was passing, there was a little speedometer on the gallops, and it was clocking the times. And we were asking him, that definitely wasn't there the last time I was there. And he said it was, well, Dunica and Joseph actually advised me to do that. And then sometimes you're wondering, is a dad bigging up his sons? But I do get the impression that he's not too arrogant to say that I've all this figured out, because you're always learning as a trainer. You're literally always learning, and even racing's evolving as well. And I think he's not too arrogant to say Joseph's going to teach me something here, or somebody else will teach me something. And that's the thing. Like Leo goes on about Jurgen Klopp. The really good football managers have to evolve. I think the trainers do as well.
Let's talk a little bit about that evolution. Before I get there, to be handed the keys to the Vincent O'Brien stable, what kind of pressure would have been on him to deliver early on in that career? Because, as we've talked about, it's a big decision, bit left field from John Magner to decide, right, this is where my future is, and to hitch his wagon to the Aidan O'Brien stable. What kind of pressure was on him?
Oh, it's a huge. I mean, it was a huge pressure because obviously we're dealing with the best bloodstock in the world. I mean, the racing is sort of the stage on which we see the fruits of the labour of the breeding industry here in Ireland, which is a massive industry. I mean, one of the biggest farming sectors. And it's an international business. There's, of course, Coolmore had huge interests in Australia and the United States as well. But, this is about making stallions that generate a lot of money, but money that then is plowed back into the business to keep it going, to employ lots of people. And I suppose one of the things that has evolved again over the years and has been a change is, not only developing the really top-class stallions, but developing the really top-class race mares. Because, when you think about Magical, Minding, and mares like that, Love, this has been a kind of pretty new in the time that Aidan has been there. And, again, that feeds back into the breeding industry because obviously they've been up into recently. You're so thrilling Giant Causeway's sister, who's now bred 4 Group 1 winners. It's a big factory, a big machine behind it, but the fruit of it are seen when it gets to the race.
And that's the bit I think that is kind of most fascinating when you understand it for the first time. It's like without the wins, then the horse's value decreases really rapidly. If you're not winning, and if the offspring aren't continuously winning, then the value of the horses that stand as stud or that are covered decreases, not quite exponentially, but it's like really rapidly. So the pressure never ends. You start winning and you're like, oh, great, we got there. But then literally it never ends.
Absolutely. I mean, breeding is a very fashionable thing. I mean, horses go out of favour very quickly, and they have a very short period of time at stud before they have to sort of prove themselves. And if they haven't done so pretty rapidly, commercial breeders then refuse to use them. And, the reality is that most stallion careers overall end in a degree of failure because they don't live up to the hype and they don't live up to expectations. But the reality, the other side of that, of course, is that, you go down and look through a list of the horses that Aidan has trained over the years and see all the great sires as well that he's produced. So it's a very, very slick machine. As I say, he has the ammunition for sure, but then you've got to formulate it, you've got to bring it together, you've got to make it into a winning team. And I know as a football fan, and a very nervous football fan, being a Manchester City supporter this weekend, but you can spend an awful lot of money on what you think is the best player around, and then watches they don't deliver, and that's very hard to do, and I'm sure it's just as difficult to do for the Coolmore organisation as well.
Yeah, and the whole story of this is goes back to Vincent O'Brien basically, and it's incredibly key to recall that Vincent O'Brien essentially put in stone that stallion line that ended up with Sadler as well as in Galileo, and bringing Northern Dancer's progeny to Europe. And this was kind of one of these sliding doors moment. Again, Vincent O'Brien, in terms of whatever you want to call a genius, was definitely saw things differently, and again, self-made, amazing man before his time. So he ended up, like Sadler as well as ended up coming because of Vincent's foresight. Sadler as well as then was obviously an amazing stallion. But Galileo, like Galileo died last year, like it was year after year after year after year of, you can get like Frankel was a better racehorse than Galileo, without a shadow of a doubt, but he probably won't be as good as Stallion, because there's more to it than that. You just have to have this like toughness in your genes, and I can literally count on one hand of all the hundreds of horses that Galileo has sired, like how many of them were ungenuine or quirky. It's just so, like, that's, if you can merge talent, a really good trainer, and that innate toughness and will to win. So Aidan was really, really fortunate to have the offspring of Galileo, and I think if whenever Aidan goes on to the next world and people write about his life, they'll say that he and Galileo came around at the same time and were perfect for each other. And I asked him during the week, like, Galileo is now passed on, and obviously his progeny are still producing stock, but it'll be very, very interesting, because this is a sea change, and you see now a lot of the other stallions coming through, but Galileo's influence will be on the wane from now on.
So to go back to that, Sadler's Wells, actually Galileo comes from Sadler's Wells.
Sadler's Wells, yeah.
Sadler's Wells comes from
Sadler's
Dancer.
Wells, yeah. So and that would have been like, Vincent went over. Leo can probably tell this better than me. Vincent went over. They went over to him, and whoever it was, Robert Sangster or whatever at the time, went over to see.
No, they went back to the time he went to Winfield Farms in Canada, in fact, and saw this horse. And there's a bit of a story about whether the horse was, he was small, he wasn't very big.
He was there to see another horse, which he didn't like. And then essentially the story goes.
See another horse, that's correct. And he didn't like him, but he saw this horse, and then people were thinking, why do you want this pony, we'll say in inverted commas, but of course it turned out to be Northern Downs.
He just saw something, and that you can't like explain that stuff. He saw something, and Vincent O'Brien would look at a horse's head before he'd do anything, and he'd, this is stuff that I'll never understand or whatever. And Northern Dancer produced Sadler as well. Sadler as well as produced Galileo. Galileo produced Frankel. Frankel is going to produce something amazing as well. I don't know, Leo, like, if Galileo and Aidan would have been an amazing trainer, full stop. There's no way he would have won anywhere near as many derbies, for example, if he didn't have Galileo.
Oh, sure. I mean, Galileo was a one-off. I mean, there are Lefty Barbie as well, who's an exception. So you get these horses that, no more than the trainers, these horses ascend into sort of a kind of a deity as well. And, it's an interesting time, I think, down as well, because obviously, the Coolmore organisation will have a lot of Galileo mares. So you can even see now where they're going outside a little bit more.
Yeah.
You're getting Siuni lines in, and
even Dubawi.
Yeah, and so that's it. But this is the part of the evolving thoroughbred, I suppose. And, it's fascinating that you're talking there as well. I mean, Vincent O'Brien had a lot more success in national hunt terms, obviously, than Aidan, because that's what he started out with, and he was winning Gold Cups and ran nationals. But, don't forget as well, Aidan trained one of the greatest hurdlers of all time in Istabrack. I think that maybe coming from that national hunt background as well is a help, because I think you get to probably know horses a little bit better, because they take a little bit more time. And so as part of the training process, I think it's good. But you can see the similarities between Vincent O'Brien and Aidan O'Brien, who, hasten to add, no relation, just have the same surname. But there's quite a lot that mirrors each other. And of course, you cannot ever forget, and Aidan would be the first to admit it, I mean, Vincent O'Brien trained at a time when I don't think he ever had more than 50, 60, 70 horses, maybe at the most, in Ballydoyle. And to do what he did with those numbers of horses was, even Aidan would be doffing his hat to Vincent on that.
It was intriguing, the visit the other day, because Luxembourg had just been ruled out of the Derby. I get the impression that Aidan's Derby horses this year, they're all right, but they're not amazing. And look, he said Luxembourg was the best of them, and he's ruled out. And he'd run in the Guineas, run really well, and then I can't remember the extent of the injury exactly, but it'll be out for a while anyway. But he was like, we were, the journalists were like, what was your reaction to that? And he said, it's just whatever, it is what it is. What's the point getting worried about that? Like, you just get on with it. And it almost seemed that, Aidan once, I asked him after, it was the Guineas weekend at the Curragh. I can't remember who won the Guineas, but he also saddled the third, right? And so we were like, it could have been when, maybe Power. Anyway, so it was like, yada, yada. I said, what did you make of your man's running third or whatever? And he said, oh, was he third, was he? So Aidan O'Brien had just trained the third in the Irish Guineas, a classic, and he didn't even understand 5 minutes after the race. He didn't, that's the depth that he has. He just saddled a horse to finish third in the Guineas, which would be a lifetime achievement for anyone, and he didn't even know it at the time. And that was what was interesting. I think over time he probably has to reflect on things like when his daughter Anna had that horrific fall in Killarney. You do wonder, like, things like that, losing his brother-in-law Pat Smullen, it probably does give a little bit of perspective in time. And when you lose a horse for a few months who's favoured for the Derby, it's interesting that he was just like, whatever, it is what it is. And I think that might have changed a bit over time.
Yeah, I think the other thing as well, I would say probably, his personal observance would be, he's a man with no ego at all.
Yeah.
He is, a humble man, but in the sense that he doesn't have an ego.
He has literally never, ever, ever, and I can think of other trainers who could be the polar opposite here in Ireland. He has literally never in front of me ever praised himself for anything. Nothing. He's never said, that was me, fair play to me, I did well there. He's never, ever, ever given himself a word of praise. He deflects.
And he deflects the success to the team but that, again, that's part of the success story, that
I think
he built a team of people around him. Pat Keatings and all these people who are there, and are incredibly loyal to him. Everybody that stands there has been there forever and ever and ever. And, that again is testament to him. He has a word for everybody. He is, as you said earlier, I think he's an incredibly polite man.
I'd say he's stern, I think there's a steel there that you don't necessarily see, and I wouldn't like to sort of work for him and let him down, put it that way. But everything Leo says there, I think that is ultimately one of the parts of his success. He does not, this is a team thing, and as much as he'll get mocked for thanking all these workers at home who looked after the horse, partly that's because staff aren't that easy to find in Ireland, and partly that's because he actually means it. And
it never comes across as instance here at all.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the work ethic, and we've talked about being fortunate enough to benefit from the quality of horses that were coming through, but also being genius enough to be able to make sure that those horses reach their full potential. That ruthlessness, is there a ruthlessness in terms of picking races, or is there another element to this that maybe we just haven't touched on before we wrap it up? Is that you've got to make sure that you know when to enter horses, when to run them, when not to run them, and that's the other side of this business that always seems a little bit like alchemy to me, where a trainer gets a horse ready for a race from 6 months in advance because they've thought there are going to be certain peaks of fitness that I know the horse is going to have to hit markers along the way, and then they'll be able to beat every other horse in the world at that precise moment in time.
Yeah, look at the fact. I suppose the secret in that one is knowing your horse and knowing when they're ready to peak, and as I say, he knows the horses. You won't find Aidan in the bar after the races at Curragh the weekend. He'll be, within an hour or two, he'll be back down in Ballydoyle and he'll be checking them all out. So he knows those horses inside out. I suppose in some ways you'd argue it may be a little bit easier for him because all the time you're aiming for the big prize. You know what I mean? It's not like a trainer who's maybe a smaller trainer who, their big day might be winning a handicap at Killarney and having a horse ready for that or whatever. Aidan's horses are ready all the time. They're ready to go. The 2-year-olds this weekend at the Curragh as well, from the Marble Hill Stakes and trying to produce these horses as 2-year-olds. You're always aiming for the big prize. I think that the secret after that is knowing when they're fit, knowing when they're ready to race. And and as I say, he's fortunate to have the backups there. I mean, he's a 5-runner 2-year-old race for Group 3 tomorrow. He has 2 of the 5. He's having to take himself on at this stage. Yeah. But look at, he's, as I say, yes, he's ruthless in the sense of obviously wanting to win all these races, but I suppose ruthless is one of those terms that's misinterpreted these days.
Totally,
might make another impression.
Yeah. Last question for you then. 25 years since he won his first classic. Is there another 25 years in this? He's still a very young man. So is there a point where he's
52 years of age? He's certainly got a lot of time ahead of him still. And, as I said, with 360 Group 1 wins on the flat under his belt. Why not go for 500 at least? I mean, it is phenomenal to think of 500 Group 1 wins. Okay. I can tell you the top trainers in England and Ireland who've had hugely successful careers, if they had 20, 25 Group 1 wins, they're still considered among the greats. It's mind-boggling, to be honest.
I lied. One last question. One last question. Do we, as casual sports fans in Ireland, appreciate him enough?
No, I don't think so at all. Over to you, Leo.
No, I think I would agree. I think that I think he's his success is at such a level that I think people have come to maybe just accept it and expect it. I personally, don't. I just think his achievements are off the scale.
Okay, that's a fitting point. Leo, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us today.
My pleasure, guys.
Thanks, Leo.
It's Leo Powell there, managing editor of the Irish Field. This is Friday Night Racing and Off the Ball, brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie, or you can follow the Twitter account at HRI Racing. We're going to be back and we'll preview the weekend's action at the Curragh next. All right, it's Friday Night Racing. It's Ger and Johnny with you every Friday afternoon, around about 3 o'clock across OTB social channels, and then again on Off the Ball and News Talk from 8 o'clock every Friday night. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I think what we maybe didn't touch on was, he's had 4 kids, and I imagine he's getting extreme, delight from what they've been doing, and God knows where Joseph's going to end up. But genuinely, fair enough, Joseph has had opportunities in life that other young trainers didn't, O'Donoghue and so forth, but Joseph's breaking the mould with some of the stuff he's doing as well, winning Melbourne Cups with 3-year-olds. Donoghue's a smaller operation and obviously has been given a bit of a head start, but is also doing very well. There are 2 really good riders as well. I think his kids are, they're very good kind of ambassadors for the family as well in terms of what they've done, and I think he's very happy in life now to see that legacy and what the kids are doing. So I think if he doesn't win the race, and he does say this, if he doesn't win it, I want them to win. And you'd be no different. I think you'd want your son to win, and you do take it for granted, and racing is a small enough world even within sport, but it's insane what he's achieved. And Jim Bulger is 80 odd. Sorry Jim if I got that wrong. Kevin Prendergast is nearer to 90. Kevin Prendergast smoked I think until he was 50, and his father on his deathbed told him to stop, so he did. So Aidan never smoked teetotal. I think I can't see why he can't go on for another 40 years really. Why not?
Yeah, okay. Right. It's a chilling thought for all the other trainers out there. The Tote 10 to follow for the flat season will open for entries this Monday the 23rd at 11 a.m. on tote.ie. Both free and paid games are available with a guaranteed minimum prize of 20 grand for the winner of the paid game. For full details, including the scoring system, list of bonus point races and how to use the Smart Pick algorithm to aid with your selections, visit tote.ie. Right, talk to us about the Guineas this weekend. You're saying a 3-day festival.
Yeah, the Curragh starts this evening, and it's a really big weekend for the Curragh because it's been a difficult time for it with this and that, COVID and little issues with the grandstand and so on. And Brian Kavanagh's at the helm now, so this will be his first classic with fans there. So you're hoping that people turn up. And the Guineas tomorrow is kind of hard to know what to make of it as a race, because Native Trail is coming over, having finished 5-4 second in the Guineas at Newmarket, and has outstanding 2-year-old of his generation. At 2 to 5 now, he should win, but I wouldn't be bothering with him at 2 to 5. And Buckaroo, it's mad. I got a tip for Buckaroo first time out when he finished 3rd in Killarney, and he was a bigger price for that race than he is for the Guineas tomorrow. But he finished 3rd to Pisbadeel. This is in Killarney. Finished 3rd to Pisbadeel, who's trained by Donoghue, Joseph's brother, who's the best horse he's ever had, who's well fancied for the Derby. So it just goes to show you the quality of these country maidens at times. But Buckaroo bolted up the last day. Mile is no problem to him. Probably back him each way if I were to have a bet in the race, but it's tricky. That's the Guineas tomorrow, and then Tuesday runs in the Guineas. She was 3rd in Newmarket. She should take a lot of beating on Sunday, I would have thought.
So the 2000 is tomorrow.
2000 tomorrow and the 1000 on Sunday. Also have the Tattersalls Gold Cup, and Weather's been a bit mad. I think the ground will be I think it'll be scattered showers, but I don't think the ground will be a big problem. Homeless songs as well for Dermot Weld in the Guineas against Tuesday. Interesting to see. He's had a quiet season so far, Dermot Weld. I think he's had 4 winners. She was one of them. And she's by Frankel. She was very good at Leopardstown. She definitely comes into it as well.
All right. Where did the Guineas horses go over the course of the rest of the season?
Yeah, so they could obviously rock up in the St James's Palace at Royal Ascot, and then you have Glorious Goodwood as well, and then maybe step up and trip for the Champion Stakes later on in the season. I think that's the thing with Aidan. He's like a lot of his sort of the Godolphin are probably getting a bit of an upper hand in these mile races to an extent, and obviously show that in the Guineas Newmarket. But I don't think these are a brilliant crop in general. The crop we have here, but some of them may step up and trip for the Champion Stakes later on in the season. I don't think this is a great crop of 3-year-olds personally, but we'll see if might have an outstanding performance. Maybe Native Trail wins by 10 lengths, but he was already beaten in Newmarket. And do horses progress over the course of a season? Yeah, like any of the Galileos, like as was pointed out, 2 of Aidan's main Derby contenders didn't even win as a 2-year-old, and he's like, well, we didn't need them to win as a 2-year-old really, and he trains Galileos a bit differently, so they're bred to progress, and they should. Probably a lot of them for distance. Indeed, Tuesday could end up running in the Oaks at Epsom, having run over a mile here, which would be very interesting. I always find that really fascinating, to train a horse for a mile classic and then to go to the Oaks over 50% further in distance in no time at all. I think that's Jim Bulger would do it, but it's not easy.
So it's not that anybody's treating this as like a prep race. It's like to see if they can win over this distance.
Yeah.
Then you push them to see if they can win over that distance too.
Yeah, and that's amazing versatility. Obviously Minding did it, but it's amazing versatility to be able to have the pace for a mile and then to settle and yet win at Epsom, which is a basket case of a track, and as well as that. I'm not saying it'll happen, but I believe that's the plan. I just prefer to back Tuesday to win on Sunday. I think she's a great chance.
And what kind of price?
94.
Okay, so acceptable
price. And the undercard as well is fascinating. Like, I think obviously, as Leo said there, Aidan has horses running against each other in the 2-year-old races. You have Broome taking on Max Sweeney, who we mentioned, obviously winning the Guineas this time last year in high definition and Lord North in the Tattersalls Gold Cup, which will be very interesting. So Frankie Dettori coming over as well. So cracking weekend of racing. And if you haven't been to the Curragh in a while, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the really, really top class facilities. Like, it's the only true modern racetrack in Ireland, I think.
All right, well, enjoy it if you're going, and if you are, make sure you check out hri.ie in advance. Friday Night Racing and Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. That's this week's show in the books. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.